So welcome back to the channel, and the Rugby World Cup is up and running. France with the win against New Zealand at the Stade de France on opening night. I was gutted not to be there. I was hoping to be there in attendance. Couldn't get there in the end. Unfortunately, it was too busy. But I will be at games over this weekend in Marseille, the England game, the Scotland-South Africa game. So plenty of rugby, plenty of reaction from stadiums coming the way on the channel. But for now, it's all about the result tonight. So let me know, what did you make of it? What did you make of the performances of both teams? And what have you learnt about both teams now after you've seen them one game in the 2023 Rugby World Cup? I've got a few things to go through, but make sure you drop a comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. But let's get into it. So this is a really interesting game in a lot of ways. It maybe wasn't quite the blockbuster that a lot of people were hoping for, but it was still a very, very good test match between two good teams. The full-time score, France 29, New Zealand 13. And there were parts of the game where I was ready to do this video as New Zealand upset the French on the opening night. And I will get on to France, deservedly so, because they won the game. It was the scoreline itself was comfortable in the end. I don't think much of the match was all that comfortable, because I thought at periods New Zealand looked really, really good. You look at that opening try that they scored right at the start of the game. They had a line out a minute into the match, and they just took their time with it, and it looked like a team that were just prepared for this moment. They felt calm in the moment of playing the hosts, who are one of the tournament favourites on the opening night of the World Cup. They took their time with the line out, they got it off the top. Rico Ioane made a break through the midfield, and then a few phases later, plus a penalty which they took quickly, they made the crossfield kick over to Talea. And there were moments like that throughout the game. The second try at the start of the second half, Talea again started with an Ardi Surveyor little chip over the top, which again is just a really clever bit of attacking play and really well made up, because the French defensive line were not expecting Surveyor at that moment to be the one to chip it over. They caught them napping a little bit, and again, it led to a try. So I think, for me, what I've learned from it almost is that New Zealand are a team that when they get it right, they really get it right, and they can hurt anyone and they can hurt you quickly. I guess the question for me that's starting to be built around this New Zealand team is, what happens when they don't get it right? What happens when things aren't going their way? And sometimes, you're going to face teams, you're going to face a good French team here, and things won't always go your way because of the quality of your opposition and what you're up against. But I felt like when this game got into more of the tactical battle that France were interested in playing, which was kicking a lot, making a bit more of an arm wrestle of a game, it was the French that just were able to get themselves back into the game after going down early, and it was the French that were able to chip away at that lead. And then the Will Jordan yellow card, they extend that lead, and eventually they got to a point where New Zealand were just having to chase it. So I suppose it's quite interesting from an All Blacks perspective, and I'm interested to hear from New Zealand fans, is where do you think New Zealand are at the moment? I still stand by it that when they're on it and when they get it right, they will do serious damage to teams in this competition. I suppose the question is, do they have the all-round game? Do they have the resilience and versatility to be able to grab a game by the scruff of the neck when it's not going your way, or the tactical battle isn't how you were hoping it would be to suit your style of play? Are they able to get it back going in their favour? Is maybe just a question mark that I have at the moment. But let's get on to the French, because look, home World Cup, all the excitement, all the expectation, having been in Paris today, people walking around in all the jerseys and the excitement. The bars were getting very full, a good kind of hour or so before kickoff tonight. And they went to try down early, and that is pressure. You are under pressure at that point, having to deal with that and the expectation. I thought they did well to come back into the game. The ability to get a penalty right after that early try at the start of the first half, I think, was key to get themselves on the board. And then I think France, in terms of the style of rugby they play at the moment, a World Cup that I think a lot of us are probably expecting to be won by sides playing more attacking rugby than we've seen maybe certainly at the 2019 World Cup. France are almost a side that, I know they do score some brilliant tries, and they scored tries in this game as well, but they still love chipping away at the score. It's kind of almost a bit of a throwback. It's not something we see too often anymore, but they do it really, really well, and they arguably, I think, do that game plan as well as anyone at the moment. The Springboks, I would have thought, might have something to say about that if they were able to get into an arm wrestle with them in a quarter-final. But France, they kick it a lot, they play field possession, and they chip away at that lead. And I think that's kind of what they did in this game, which made things pretty difficult ultimately for the All Blacks to get get back into the game. So I did think it was a bit of a funny matchup in a lot of ways, because a lot of the real highlight, real great stuff that we saw, I think probably came from New Zealand. But I think some of that tough, detailed, gritty elements of the game was what France were able to pull off. So I don't know, that was kind of my reading on it. You can let me know in the comment section. A few other bits to go through. First of all, Julien Marchand, who won a brilliant turnover for that first penalty for the French and then limped off fairly shortly after that. You've got to remember, with Romain Ntamak out, Paul Willemse out, yes, they don't want to see too many more injuries there. There's some pretty key guys that France have lost already. I think Julien Marchand is one of the best hookers in the world, certainly in terms of his all-round play around the park. I think he's right up there, possibly in a World 15. So hopefully he's okay, but concern over there. And elsewhere, just a few other players to mention, kind of on the All Blacks side of the ball. I thought Rieko Ioane, particularly in the first half, was outstanding at 13. The Richie Mo'unga tackle on Damien Penaud is as good a covering tackle as you will ever see. It was absolutely sensational. Diving, covering tackle. Penaud looked destined to score and knocking the ball out of his hands. So those are just a few guys that I kind of wanted to mention, give a little bit of praise for. And I actually hope from this game we see more teams attack France in the way New Zealand did early on in the game, where you play quickly, you inject pace into it. New Zealand from that first phase looked like they had an exact idea in mind of what they wanted to do from that line out, which they scored the first try from, which was get it off the top of the line out, whip it into midfield, break through the line and put France under pressure that way. And I do wonder whether they have uncovered a little bit of a blueprint of at least how to put France under more pressure. Because as I've said already, I think when you get into the tactical type of game that France want to play, with a lot of tactical kicking, we saw a lot of that, then it really does play into the French's hands. It's how they've been playing over the last 4 years, and they've almost perfected it. They execute it really well. But if you can do what New Zealand did to them, and it's not always easy. Look, France's tactical kicking game is so good. They're one of the best teams in the world. They will do their best to make the game plan suit how they want to play. But if you can do what New Zealand did to them, if you can inject pace into it and try and stretch them, then I just think there's maybe a few more weaknesses there, because teams do funny things when they get put under pressure like that. I appreciate it is easier said than done, but I just really like the way in which New Zealand went about it at the start of the game. I think it was a shame that they couldn't maintain that enough throughout the 80. But overall, brilliant start for France at home. New Zealand's first ever defeat in the pool stage of a World Cup, which is an utterly ridiculous statistic that they should be incredibly proud of. I know it's disappointing that that run comes to an end, but that is phenomenal to have that sort of record. So I think realistically they will still come through this group, most likely in second now. They'll whoever comes first in Pool B, so that will set up a brilliant quarter final. But I still think there's enough there for New Zealand to feel positive about. The question is, can they do it on a more consistent basis? That's the question for me for this All Blacks team. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Let me know what you made of the occasion, both teams and both of these teams' chances of winning the World Cup from what you've seen in their first 80 minutes. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel as well, and I'll see you in the next one.